Hi, I'm Frank Scarcello, and you're watching Frank Conversations. And today I have with me Charla Robinson.
Nice to be here, Frank.
Thank you for coming in. Charla, of course, is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and has a pulse, has a finger on the pulse of the business community. But I know you're also very interested in what our municipal government is up to, and you're always very vocal when it comes to the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a little bit behind us now, but it's still important to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So give me your comments on the most recent city budget.
Okay, well, certainly appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
You're very welcome.
And yeah, I mean, as the voice of business, obviously, the business community is concerned about how the city taxes are being set each year, and so that's one of the things that we do comment on. And I want to give council credit this year because I think they recognize going in that the last 2 years, with increases in the 3.5 sort of range, that it would be really challenging to come in with a similar increase 3 years in a row.
Right.
So they were very, they were very clear up front that they wanted to try to bring the increase down this year because it had been higher the last couple of years. And so, I really appreciate that, and I know the business community really appreciates that. And so they had some tough choices to make this year. But they were able to bring it down to 2.1%, which, as I understand for business, that actually comes in more around a 1.5 with the differences in the way things are calculated. So that's definitely good news for business. And so it's a good news story, but then there's also the long-term story. And so the way that the budget was reduced to bring it down to that meant a lot of projects again were deferred.
Because it was more reductions in the capital.
Exactly.
Spending on infrastructure has been reduced to get that number in line.
Yeah. So there's a number of things that they decided. Okay, well, we're going to wait another year to do this. So which is certainly one of the options that they have. And I appreciate that it's difficult decisions to make. They've got people phoning them every day saying don't cut this, don't cut that, that sort of thing. But I guess the trend that we're seeing is that every year the budget is getting more challenging.
Right.
And that it's becoming a real challenge for City Council to keep the tax increases in a reasonable range because the costs of doing business for the municipality
just keeps going up. Right.
And we know that there's some factors that they really have very limited control over because of things like arbitration and those kinds of things with unions, and so they really have very little control over those. But I guess what we're saying is we hope that they'll start to pay some really detailed attention to the areas where they do have the control to bring the spending down. So that they've done a fair bit of work with the previous city manager. They went through a lean process and they went through some other review process and they were able to save $5 million, and that's wonderful. And we want that kind of review to continue. That should be an ongoing thing so that it's not suddenly January we start talking about budget and suddenly it's a panic. It should be an ongoing thing, and I certainly know that that's the intention of the city manager, Norm Gale, and that's also the intention of council, is to try to be having these discussions throughout the year and looking at things to say, how can we not just leave everything to that 6-week budget crunch.
That doesn't make sense, and then it's all sort of desperation, panic and desperation.
It's very hard to make big decisions.
Now you did mention the Thunder Bay Lean program, and we talked about it before we started about using that word lean. My opinion, lean to me is a little bit different than maybe some other people, but $4 million over 5 years was a nice little start, but really not a lot in my opinion. So you have also talked about, you often talk about a core services review. Tell us what that is and why it's important.
Well, what we're saying is that we know that there are some things that the city has to provide. There are some services that either they are mandated by the province to provide, or that there's just an expectation of the city, residents, that the city is going to provide this. But there's also a number of things that the city doesn't have to provide, things that are being provided by other groups in the community that the city is providing sort of a duplicate service.
Right.
You know, things that come up often would be golf courses, right? There are many private golf courses. Daycares, there's many private daycares.
Okay.
You know, some of those sorts of things where the city is providing a service in addition to a service that is available through, you know, the private sector. And so those are the kinds of things that we think would be a really good place to start. You know, have those conversations about, okay, these aren't things that we have to do. So let's talk about the things we don't have to do. And let's really get the information out about how much is it costing, because again, I don't think citizens really know exactly how much it's costing to do some of these things.
Yeah, and I do actually have some numbers, and I think they're fairly accurate. I got them from a pretty good source. So golf courses, the city taxpayers subsidize the two remaining golf courses, I guess, Chappers and Strathcona, to about $500,000 a year. When it comes to daycare, it's about $800,000 per year. So that's some serious money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, you know, I think Mayor Hobbs did mention in the last budget deliberation that, you know, maybe they should look at Strathcona, but it's a discussion the community has to take.
Absolutely.
What's your feeling about something like the conservatory, which really doesn't have a competitor in the private sector?
The conservatory is a different thing. I mean, certainly it's not something that the city has to provide. But you're right. There isn't really a lot of other options like that. So you know, even though it's maybe a non-core service, it might be something that the city decides, you know, maybe we want to keep doing that because it is unique and it is something that the city is sort of meeting filling a niche. But again, I know that they've done some work to try to find ways to make the conservatory more efficient. And they've certainly done a lot of work now to promote the conservatory, which hadn't been done previously, so that more people are using it. So that's great.
So, you know, this core services review, I know it was discussed often, and there seems to be more councillors getting on board with it. But then, you know, what's it going to look like? Do you hire someone from the outside? Do you do it internally? And I'm thinking, you know, and that there's a debate there. But like you said, you know, it should be part of the ongoing discussion that the councillors have with administration, and you don't really need, you know, it's not really rocket science. We know what the core services are. We know what is extra. Just deal with it. Yeah,
and it could be something that's a little more you know, piecemeal, right? So it's not undertaking a whole big review of everything all at once. It could be, again, identifying a particular thing and saying, okay, let's do a review of this service. Let's see if there's ways we can you know, maybe improve it. We can find more efficiencies. You know, those kinds of things. Or do we want to do more partnership opportunities with the private sector? Like, there's multiple different ways to skin a cat, as they say, right? And so, you know, that's the kind of thing we're talking about, is not just this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we continue to do it. Let's look at different options for some of these services.
Because, as you said, the operating costs are there. They continue to go up. I think they have the municipal inflation rate pegged at around 3%. So in the absence of significant new revenue, which is hard to get, and I think we're starting to get a little bit, but it's not really, you know, it's not coming in great amounts. You know, operating costs, we're going to continue to talk about that, and whether it's core services, and maybe another time we can talk about, you know, stuff that you talked about at the beginning, you know, the operating costs, you know, that they don't really have much control of, but they have control over some of them. You know, the number of employees we have, because that has to be discussed, because it's there's no other way.
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of things to talk about.
Exactly. So what your feelings on the federal budget? A quick any comments about the federal budget?
Yeah, well, certainly the federal budget. I mean, again, budgets are pretty comprehensive documents at a federal level. But there were a couple of things that I noticed that maybe Thunder Bay could actually benefit from. So certainly we've got some infrastructure funding for First Nations to enhance, you know, water, wastewater, those sorts of things. And we have a lot of First Nations around us. Absolutely. And so that's an opportunity for our business community to potentially get some contracts, get some work, you know, construction jobs, that sort of thing. And you know, that's always good for the economy. EI, changes to EI to provide more benefits for long-term employees who've lost their jobs. So obviously that's a good thing. If you know that people will have the EI coverage for longer, it gives them you know, a little bit longer time to find a job. So those are a couple of the things. I mean, certainly the deficit is a little bit frightening. but recognizing that this government has decided that they want to make investments to try to spur the economy.
Exactly.
And so now the important part is to make sure that the money that they're spending is actually spurring the economy and not just spending for the sake of spending. So
well, that's the key.
That
it has
will
to be
be
spent
part
properly.
of that'll be part of following it through.
Yes. Now the Ring of Fire is something that we hear about a lot, and it's sort of appeared on the news lately because we had some Chinese rail investors. I guess they were tied to some that came in and looked at the Ring of Fire. They're very interested. So that has to be something that for the chamber and for the region, we're excited, but hopefully optimistic.
Absolutely, certainly watching it closely and really excited to see foreign investors with interest, because we do need that influx of investment dollars to make that project move forward.
And after all, they're going to be the people that they want the chromite.
Absolutely,
we got the chromite.
Absolutely.
So you have your finger on the pulse of the business community in Thunder Bay. How would you rate the confidence or their overall confidence?
Well, certainly I think it's maybe depends on some sectors. Some sectors maybe are like the mining sector right now. It's a bit of a challenging time with mineral prices, that sort of thing. So maybe they're not feeling quite as robust as they were a few years ago. But there's certainly lots of things happening. We see a number of hotels that have gone up in the last few years. So the hospitality sector is really booming. With the U.S. dollar, tourism is definitely a huge opportunity because it's so much more affordable for Americans to come up across the border. So
they just need passports.
They just need those. They just need to have their proper paperwork.
Yeah,
so,
it's frustrating when you hear that. What's the biggest deterrent?
Yeah,
they don't have passports. Well,
exactly.
Exactly.
Anyway. Well, again, Americans tend to maybe stay more. A lot of them stay more in the U.S.
In
so
the country.
We've got to encourage them to come across, but that's definitely a big opportunity, and lots of opportunity in the food sector. We've seen lots of great new restaurants.
Yeah.
We've got new agricultural things happening, which are then providing those restaurants. We've seen that connection between farmers and restaurants, so that's really great.
Excellent.
And of course, the medical research that's going on with the hospital, the cyclotron, the research institute,
lots of good stuff.
University, lots of great stuff happening.
I really like the food industry has really stepped up, and I think that's a good piece with the tourism. If they could, there's something that could happen there. Because tourism, food, we have the attractions. Winter, summer. So let's hope that.
And Tourism Thunder Bay has been doing a lot of work to really promote the flavor of Thunder Bay and the different culinary experiences, and it's so great to see. It seems like there's a new restaurant opening every few months,
fantastic.
and it's wonderful.
And tourism dollars are the best dollars because it's new money.
It's new money.
And you got new money coming in, that's what you want.
Absolutely.
Old money sloshing around is great.
It's good.
But new money is the best.
It is.
But thank you very much for coming in,
Thanks for
Charla.
having me.
My pleasure. It was great to talk to you, and we'll have you in again. And thank you everyone for watching.